So I'm happy, and that isn't some great revelation, but for me, the last couple of years have been in this kind of state of dissonance. And there's this voice in the back of my mind that just kind of screams because I don't know what I'm doing, and I have a big decision to make. And so even when I have decided, it doesn't really shut up because, well, I don't know if it was the right choice or not. And for me, one of those huge decisions was coming here, actually, to Emily Carr University of Art and Design. So even as a kid, I never knew what I was doing. I didn't know, I didn't have a plan or a calling. I didn't know what I wanted to grow up to be. And so at around 12, I thought, hey, it'd be cool to be a teacher. And I went with it, and I made a plan. So I would go study how to teach, go to university away from home, and go through all that independence, learning how to be an adult thing. And none of that happened. So I'm still at home. I'm here studying industrial design. And I feel like I'm the farthest from having my life together. It wasn't even my idea to apply. So attending National Portfolio Day, that was part of a mandatory art class I took in high school. And National Portfolio Day, for those who don't know, is where representatives from art schools around the country, nation, they come and critique and review artists' work. And so on that day, I stood in line for hours, stumbled my way through a 10-minute conversation, and ended up walking away saying, hey, this is just a learning experience, because I didn't think it'd be anything else. And so even though I love what I did, that's what I took it as. And a couple weeks later, I got a letter, and I had gotten in. I was excited, but I still dismissed it, because it wasn't my plan. I wasn't gonna come here. And then my brother told me to go. And even though I was still as hesitant as before, I trusted his opinion. And so on the day of the acceptance deadline, I took my offer and came here to Emily Carr. But that whole uncertainty, the discomfort, it did not end there, and I still feel that way. Even last semester, I was working on this project, and I struggled for months and felt like I came up with nothing. So the whole idea of it was, the brief asked our class to come up with a design for Vancouver 2035, as if the downtown core was motor-free, human-powered. And for me, which is a person who can barely figure out what I'm doing a month from now, 20 years was such a long time. And so I struggled, I really did, and I came up with a whole bunch of ideas, and then I tossed those aside and had to stick with one, and that changed as well, and it changed again. And finally, I came up with something that kind of resembled a final version. And so every project for me is kind of like that, this whole panic, uncertainty before I kind of have to figure out my way. And that's part of it. That's how I'm getting comfortable with things like this, and the whole unknown is going through a lot of practice. And something else that I've learned at the school actually is it's not just practice, it's also finding a way to work through and being actively working towards something, even if I don't know what it is. And that was the principle behind this 100 Ideas challenge, that I did for a health lab project. And so we had to come up with 100 different ideas within 2 weeks and to present that. And even though there were a team of 6 of us, by the time we reached like 50, we were struggling. And it ended up being strange things like fruit puns and floor projections and ugly produce. But the thing is, even though we didn't use those ideas, they were really important. And it didn't end up seeming so at first, but we needed to hear those ideas because it contributed to that creative space and to that final design. And so, yeah, it's a lot of practice. Yeah, it's a lot of just working at it, but it's also a lot of failing, and it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of doubting yourself along the way, but not being able to stop anyway. And that kind of leads me to where my current project is at. And so my class right now is asking us to talk and work around medical design and healthcare and what that means to us. And personally, that means positive psychology and happiness and seeing the benefits on physical health through all of that. And so I started doing research and finding inspiration from these artists and the designers, scientists, all wondering like, what makes people happy? And it brought me not necessarily answers, but more questions. So what makes people happy? Can you make people happy? And if it has anything to do with our community, our relationships, and even what it means as a location like Vancouver. So wondering all these questions, walking through them and thinking about them, I didn't necessarily come up with answers, but I did gain a really great insight into other people's emotional experiences. And with that came a lot of understanding of my own. And I came here to the school, had no idea what I was doing. And even right now, I have even just no clue at all, but I'm still not quite that scared anymore. And I'm starting to realize it's because of those moments that I have become who I am. And I've kind of started seeing them as opportunities for something better. Even though it's still uncomfortable, even though I still don't really like it, I am really glad that I've had those times in my life. I have found my happiness in uncertainty, and I hope you will too.